Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me because I know there's sometimes a little delay. So thank you. This is hopefully going to challenge some of you. That's what I always say whenever I'm teaching anything, but it does fit in. I didn't know what Holly was going to say this evening, but it also fits in with any of you who watched last week's session as well. So, you know, we do complement each other, but we don't always know what each other are going to say. So hopefully you'll find this engaging this evening. The reason that we gave this title of a work-life balance within a changing midwife role is because my role has changed dramatically over all of my career, which is now into its 42nd year. But it's done it because my life has changed. In the middle of my life there with my midwifery, I actually got married. So that was a real balance for me. But this is how I work now and how I maintain my health, because I'm slightly more mature midwife than many of you may be, but it's still important that we keep this balance. So I thought, first of all, well, anyone who knows me knows that I'm a very typical Capricorn. I'm a very, very, very organised person. And that, for me, just boils down to a very organised diary. And yes, I still have a paper diary. Holly showed you her book. My book's more boring. It's just a paper diary. But for me, the biggest thing is it's all colour coded. So I know when I'm looking to do something, I think, well, have I done that in the last month or last week or whatever? And that's how I start to get my balance of my work during a week or a month. The other thing that balances that is a lot of my work is abroad, which I'm very, very fortunate to be able to do. And I still love this photo. This was one of our first trips with an American colleague to India. But if you can see in the background where I'm standing at the podium, which is not me, which is why I found Zoom so challenging. I'm not a standstill person. But behind us, it actually says the School of Ancient Wisdom. And I've always hung on to that because I think sometimes we negate where our leaderships come from. And Holly's mentioned it, and it was certainly mentioned last week about leadership. So, yeah, that's me and my balance, my beautiful diary, and just really balancing with where I've come from and where some of our colleagues have come from. I work with a lot of different organisations. I think this is all of them, but I can't guarantee it. I did go through my diary. Some you may recognise, many are UK. Some are charities, some, like Maternity Midwifery Forum, obviously have a high profile for us. I do work for the Care Quality Commission. I work abroad as well with various organisations. I mentioned the Sanctum on my moment of the week for me, and that's been my passion about getting information, as Sue rightly said, evidence-based information out to any organisation, charity, anyone who contacts me. And some might be very unusual to you. You may or may not have heard all of them, but as Sue said, everything is taped. So if you don't know about any of these organisations, then obviously you can look them up. I just slid in at the bottom there, the Expert Witness Directory. Because I work freelance, this work is not going to be covered by the Royal College of Midwives, who are there because, as Sue very kindly said, I am a fellow. So that's just something I had to be very aware of. So I guess that's not just personal well-being, it's professional well-being. I have to make sure that I'm covered legally when I'm doing some of these roles, particularly if they're outside the UK, because the RCM would not cover me, and rightly so, in some of the roles that I do elsewhere. So how do I balance my time and my well-being and my life? So on one side, I've got what I really do, which I've started to mention. Certainly a lot of face-to-face teaching, thank goodness, back to that. But as Sue said, you know, the midwifery hours started during the pandemic, so all my teaching had to go live onto Zoom. And I have found that very hard. trying to teach water births in an office is not easy. And I had a terrible habit of keep disappearing out of the screen because I was going down to get a piece of research or something. So that was a real challenge to me. And it was something I did find hard. I wasn't lonely, but I did find it hard. I always write. I love writing. My reviewer is my sister, who will get mentioned a bit further over. And I've just started to rewrite a water birth book, which I will get out next year. So anyone interested, please email me. I'm after stories and photographs. I do book reviews for one of those organisations in America. So I get some very, very interesting books to review. The one I've got at the moment that's on the go is about Ebola, which you might think, but it's lessons to be learned. When COVID first hit, one of the big things I found was remembering the lessons we learnt when HIV first hit. So the Ebola one, because I have heard the author speak, so I know what's in it, I think it's going to be a very interesting one for me to review. But I've got another one to finish first. So, yeah. I do research, not always primary research. Sometimes I help with things like meta-analyses or give guidance to people on a very simple level if they're starting up a water birth or a birth centre service, what data they need to collect, real basic stuff, and then please publish it. That's my big bugbear. If I go to different countries, and I was in Poland recently, and they do water births there, but you try and find any research. So I nagged the Polish, so let's hope we get some articles from them in the next year or so. They collect the data, but they don't share it, which is just madness. And then I do have a lot of consultancy roles for parent organisations as well as other organisations. So doing all that, how do I keep my sanity and my well-being going? I call them refreshing lunches. I mentioned about meeting my Indian colleagues last week. From a business point of view, they're business lunches. And we do talk shop, but we also talk about our own health as well. And, you know, are there any big challenges in our business lives? There aren't many freelance midwives out there. And those that there are have a very, very close network. And luckily, one of my colleagues lives very close. So we have lots of refreshing lunches. I briefly mentioned, but I couldn't do any of this without my family and friends. I don't have a manager anymore. I don't really have another leader. And they were very important in the early stages when I was still working clinically and setting up the business. But my family and my friends have been amazing. My sister, as I said, is my book reviewer, and my husband, Howard, just sits and nods and, yeah, you do if you want to do it, Dianne, and if you don't, that's fine. He's not medical, so actually having a sounding board like someone like that, I find amazing. One of the other things that I had to start doing to help a neighbour was at the height of COVID, and he was one of the people told he had to stay at home because he had quite bad COPD, lung disease. And he wasn't worried about himself, but when he phoned me, he said, I've had this letter. I don't know what it means. And of course, he read it out and it said he had to stay at home. He said, but what about the dog? He wasn't worried about himself. So I started dog walking, and here I am 4 years later, different dog, sadly, the other one passed away, but I now walk Max. And his big treat of the week, maybe I should have asked him what was his tip for the week, is we go to the local pub. We walk down there and we go for a drink. We only have coffee. Max has chews and gets well petted. So the dog walking is really important. And Holly very kindly said about exercise, but that to me is one of my exercises. I also joined an exercise class in the village. So it's got me to know my village much better than I did before. And we call it drum fit. It's basically a big birth ball on a big tub with drumsticks to music. So we do have fun with that. And the group are very, very varied in their age and their backgrounds, but they're all local to my community. Also, I help the community cupboard, which is our food bank. We don't call it that. We like to sound more positive. So it's our community cupboard. It is very much a community-based cupboard. I phone them up when I go shopping and say, what do you need? Last week it was noodles and coffee. So I do get some funny looks when I check out at Asda, because I've got like 15 bags of noodles and 10 jars of coffee. And I'm not saying it to be, this is how I feel I'm helping my community, which is part and parcel again of what Holly said. We come into the profession to help. So I really enjoy doing that, and they're a great crowd up there. So one of the photos there leads in beautifully to these reflections on colleagues and maternity services. That was taken at the Maternity Midwifery Festival in London, so not long ago. And I'm in the pink. It's a pink Indian top, as you probably guessed. In the middle is Becky Reed. If you haven't read her book, Closure, it's worth reading. And Caroline Flint, which I hope a lot of people will know. And I don't know what we are. Are we the mature midwives? Are we the elders? I'm not sure. But I always say to everyone, please utilise us. We have got a wealth. Between us, we believe there's about 120 years of experience there. Yeah, because I asked them how long they've both been midwives. I know how long I have, but yeah, about 120 years of experience. Sue mentioned the portfolio for revalidation. That becomes a challenge, particularly when you move outside, as I have now, of the NHS. You have to be far more creative, but still fall within the remit of revalidation. And of course, finding somebody who can and will revalidate you, because it was difficult within the NHS because only a fraction of my time was actually taken up with pure clinical hours. So again, anyone wants some advice and support, I'm here, because I've had to learn in the last few years. Holidays, very important. It goes back to this break issue and having your own space. And I love skiing. So that was me this year, in Flaine in France, skiing. My husband and I just go, this is our time out. A lot of the time, as Holly said, we think about friends and neighbours, and we're often the last one. So skiing for me is my real time out. And then my cat, because I mustn't forget Ozzy. He's my little buddy. And all through COVID, he used to just sit at my feet. He almost could sense that something was going on and that his mum needed him. So Ozzy is my baby. And he's been absolutely fantastic to me all the way through. So it's a very unusual way I work. However, everything that Holly and the colleagues last week talked about certainly all fit into this. If I had to pinpoint one thing, it's about being organised. And I know not everyone's going to be a Capricorn, but if you look at Capricorn traits, we are known for our organisational skills. But I'm very happy and have helped colleagues over the years to try and find their way through this. But certainly being organised, for me, keeps my health and my well-being going. I hope that's helpful. Thank you, Sue.